Today we're going to draw this little chickadee. So this is a very tiny bird. If you don't have any in your area, you could look them up because they are really cute. They can fit in the palm of your hand. So this one is a black-capped chickadee. So I'm going to start, like we always do, with the basic shapes I see. So for his body, I see an oval. I was going to say a circle, but it's an oval because his body tips back that way. So I'm going to move my paper over a little bit. I'm going to start off with an oval. This picture is actually, it's bigger than the actual bird. These are very tiny little birds. So something like that. So my oval does tip. You can see that this oval tips a little bit. And then his head is another little flat oval. You can go right on top of this. With this little flat oval there for his head. So like we always do with the basic shapes, we're determining where he's going to go on the paper, where we want to place him. So next, I can add his wing in there. So his wing is just sort of a triangle that comes down like this. It goes a little bit beyond his body, and then his tail is going to come off of that. Okay, now we're going to go back and try to make him a little more exact, make him more lifelike. So I'm going to start, I think I'm going to start right here at this white place on his head. So as I do that, I'll say that's right about here. So I'm going to go up, and it starts off a little bit flat. And then he's got this little curve for his head, doesn't he? So I start off flat, and I'm going to curve his head like this. I'm not going to worry about his beak right now. That's a very tiny beak, but I'll come back to that later. So I'm just going to pay attention to his head and his body right now. So I come back here, and then it goes a little bit of a straight line down here. And then look, his chest comes all the way out like this. So I did this little bit of a straight line, and then his chest is going to come out. So my shapes drawing is pretty close. It's a little bit, I went in a little bit far there, but it's pretty close. I'm pretty close on this edge here. Okay, now I'm going to bring this around, and then his tail is going to come in here at the end. So, that was pretty good. So I'm going to go back now and erase these extra lines. I don't need this line here for his body and his head where they connect. I don't need that one anymore. I'm going to erase that. Still want his wing there. Okay, so now I'm going to start marking him. So this is where the white started. And I'm going to bring it up. It goes over, and then it comes up, and it makes a triangle. Do you see this triangle of white? I'll bring it up like that, and it comes, so his beak would be, his beak is here on the edge, but it comes a little bit into his head. And when I come up here, that white isn't going to go quite to the edge. It'll end where the beak comes in. And my triangle goes about like that. And then that's where his beak will come in, his little beak. His little beak crosses that line for his head. It's not right on the edge of his head. It's because of how his face is turned. It comes into his head a little bit, and then here's the white part. And this is his little black cap. Now his eye is in line with the top line of the white. So as I bring this, I'm looking at it, come back about this far, and his little eye is going to come in right about here. If it's hard to see on your reference photo, because it's a black eye on a black cap, but we'll make it show up when we color him in. Now he's got this little black part here. Sometimes I've called that a bib. It looks like a little bib, doesn't it? And that's coming, and that actually comes at a diagonal, so I can fix that right there. And it's going to come back and match the edge of the white. So if you're getting a little confused by these lines, go ahead and color some in. I'm going to color in this little bib. That'll help make things a little clearer for me. And I could color in his little black cap too. I'm going to want to leave a little bit of gray around his eye because I don't want to lose his eye. So I'm going to lightly color around it. And now my black will just go as far as that gray. You see that? That way I'll be able to see his eye. And then I'll color in the rest. So I'm just coloring this in darkly with my pencil. But I left a little bit of gray around his eye because otherwise his eye would get lost in his black cap. But we might as well finish his eye now that we're here. I'm going to erase some of these extra lines on his little beak. Make that a little clearer. So while we're here, let's go ahead and do his eye. So his eye, it's black with a tiny little catch light in it. Remember, the catch light is the light's reflection of the sunlight. But I'm not going beyond my gray. I'm leaving that little bit of gray so that, see, I can see his eye, even though he has this black cap. Well, I was leaving gray. I might have gone a little far. You can always go back and erase a little bit. But so I can still see his eye. I'm going to smooth out his little cap here. And on this part, you can see there's a little bit of unevenness. That's because of his feathers. So if you wanted to make that a little uneven, you could. This little bit there. Okay, so we have his head. Like it's just about done. I'm going to curve that a little more. And moving down toward his wing, he's got this gray section here. These are very small gray feathers. I'm just going to mark off that section. And so we don't get confused, I can go ahead and color it in. And I'm coloring it in, making lines going in this direction because this is the direction that the feathers are going. Even though they're short, they're going in that direction. Then he has his wing, which I have right here. So I can erase this extra line. I don't need this right here anymore. I'll erase that. And his wing is darker on the bottom, so I can darken that up a little bit. And again, my coloring is going this way because this is the way his feathers go. And then I can just do some lines. Look how that looks like the long feathers of the wing. All right, let's see, we have that. We need this little part, and then my last part. Well, we do need to come back to the tail, but we'll go ahead and do this part of his body. And these are these little tan feathers. I can show those by just making some little marks like this. This again is the direction the feathers are going. Sort of like when we are drawing fur, we make short lines for short fur, long lines to show long fur. These are short little fluffy feathers. So I'm doing short little lines. By leaving them spaced out, it makes that part of the bird appear lighter. So he's a little lighter in color on this part than he is that part. Although if you wanted to, you could always shade it in a little bit. It's still lighter than that gray part there. So I could shade that in. I do need to get rid of this line that leads into his tail. He's got a little bit of that tan fluffy feathers on the base of his tail. And then the tail feathers, I can just draw by drawing a couple lines like that. Now this little bird, we can't really see his feet because he's sitting on some berries. So I'm going to draw a few large berries for him to sit on. So if you look at this berry, it comes over part of the bird, doesn't it? It overlaps him. He's sitting behind that first berry. And these berries, thinking about shapes, are large circles, aren't they? So I went over a little bit of his body there to show that berry. And then he's got another one over here. That looks like an old crumpled berry. I'm going to go ahead and make it a beautiful fresh berry. And then there's one right there. You don't have to draw these berries any particular way. I'm just sort of making a berry clump here. They do have, this is like the little stem part of the berry, I think. And that looks like sort of coming out like this. Or you could just make these nice big round berries. And they don't need a top to them. I think that's what the top looks like. Something like that. My printout isn't the best, but something like that. Or you could just leave them as nice round berries. If you leave them as round berries, or if you color, or if you put the tops on them, either way, we do want to give them a little bit of color. I say color, but I mean shading, because our bird is shaded. So one way I would probably do that, what I would probably do is put some graphite on my paper, pick it up with my finger, and just shade them in. And as I do, I'm making my finger go in circles because these berries are round. You can go round and round like that. And you can also add, as I'm shaking my whole table with my camera, you can also add these highlights to these berries if you want. You can mark them in or take your eraser and mark them in. But this is where the light is shining off the berries. I have to make a note not to put my camera stand right against the table, don't I? But there's your little chickadee. So, okay, I'm going to take just a minute to compare mine to this one. I noticed, I was going to say we're done, but I'm noticing mine is, he's actually he's a little thinner, isn't he? This one is much more boxy. So, if I wanted to change him a little bit, because these birds are very small and a little bit boxy, I might bring this line out here a little bit more. I think that is a little more accurate. Sorry. I think, his beak. We didn't color his beak. Let's color his beak in. Well, I gave him a very sharp beak. I was trying to make it a little bit pointier. So his beak is gray. And there we go. So there is our little chickadee. I like him better now. What do you think of yours? I think either way, he was good practice. I think his beak might need to take a little bit more off his head here. But he's good practice and great job, and I'll see you tomorrow.